I would like to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight to the ChamberWest Taylorsville City Meet the Candidates tonight for the primary election. We're glad each of you could be here tonight. And I just want to say a couple things first as we get started. I have papers on our letterhead in the back. It's not really an agenda, but it's a list of candidates, and this is the order that we will go tonight. So you're welcome to take one of those with you. ChamberWest, which is the Chamber of Commerce for Taylorsville and some other neighboring cities, we are an independent business organization. We're separate from the cities that we represent. We currently represent 4 cities: West Valley, Taylorsville, Kearns, and Mill Creek on the east side of the Chamber name. And like I mentioned, we're independently funded, and we have a policy that we do not endorse or oppose candidates for any municipal office, and nor do any of our membership dollars are contributed to different campaigns. So we do take stands on issues, but not on candidates. I have to work with whoever wins, so I want to make sure that we have good dialogue with the successful candidates. I would ask you if you would please turn your cell phones to vibrate or off so that we don't have disruptions during the event. And I think that's everything we've got. I think we've got candidates here. So the format will be, we have District 3 and District 4. Now they are not having a primary election because there was only 2 candidates running. But we will still allow them to come up to the dais, and they will have 2 minutes to just give their opening comments, and then they'll be able to sit down and enjoy this evening's event. When we get to the District 5 candidates, I received an email that Mr. Dan Armstrong was unable to attend, and I don't know, I never heard back if he had a representative here to campaign manager that would speak for him. And so I'm not seeing any hands. I'll assume that we'll have a representative for him. And then in the mayor's race, Rick Morley is out of town. I also offered the same option to him to have a campaign manager. Oh, we have someone to speak for Rick. Okay. Thank you. And I didn't ask beforehand, but I think it would be appropriate. I would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if that would be all right. So if all of you would please rise and repeat the pledge after me, that would be wonderful. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to sit over here where John Morgan usually sits, and that's where I've got the questions. The questions that have been asked tonight were submitted to the Chamber's email address, tvillequestions@gmail.com. We do have access to that account, so if you do have follow-up questions, you're welcome to submit it to that address, and if we have time, we will get to them as many as I can. So feel free to still submit questions using your smart devices, tablets, and phones as well. So District 3 candidates, Brad Christopherson and Dave Ballou. You'll just come up on the dais and just kind of sit right here. We'll do the 2-minute introductions, then we'll go to District 4. And we'll start with the questions when we get to District 5. And then I would like to do it in alphabetical order, which is, we don't play favorites. So Christopherson starts, oh, I got it wrong. It's Dave Ballou. So we'll start with you for 2 minutes. We do have a timer, and I will, do we have Cheryl, are you timekeeping from over there? Okay. So Cheryl will give us our time cues if we're just speaking to the microphone. This is being recorded for broadcast on Comcast Channel 17 multiple times between now and the primary election day. Go ahead.
Hello, thank you all for coming. My name is Dave Ballou. I'm running for City Council in District 3. I've lived in Taylorsville for just about 5 years now. And I grew up in Holiday, and when we first moved in, I said, there's no way I'm living in Taylorsville. You couldn't pry me away from this city with a crowbar. I love it here. I hope to raise my family here. I hope to stay here forever. I feel that it's my duty and my obligation to give back to the community that has done so much for me. The reason I'm running is because I do like to be involved. I like to help my neighbors, my friends, get their goals accomplished and to live in a beautiful place that I feel comfortable raising my family in. So currently, I have served on the Ordinance Review Committee, and I'm currently the chairman of the District 3 Community Council. So I look forward to continuing to serve and hopefully keep Taylorsville moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Brad Christopherson, and I'm currently serving as the City Councilman for District 3. Tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Taylorsville, with the exception of 2 missions to LDS mission to France and 3 years in law school in Ohio. I've lived in Taylorsville my whole life. In fact, my memory goes back to when the Family Center was new and the furniture warehouse building was a Grand Central. So, following law school, my wife and I moved our family back to Taylorsville. She's here with me tonight, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Wendy. We are currently raising our 3 children here, and I've been practicing law for the last 5 years in the Valley. So, it has been a pleasure to serve on the City Council. I think that my education and legal background and experience has given me allowed me to give a positive impact and positive contribution to the city and to the City Council, both in reviewing ordinances as well as solving complex problems the city is currently facing. My communication and reasoning skills have helped others understand where we are trying to go and move the city forward. I've been able to help build a consensus on a number of issues facing the city, both among the staff, who's excellent by the way, and among council members. I also want you to know that I believe tax dollars are sacred. I work very hard to make sure that they are spent wisely. As we tell you what my vision for the city is, I want to say a family-friendly community where our shopping centers have a mix of shops and businesses that attract not only Taylorsville residents, but attract those from surrounding communities. That will obviously increase the flow of tax dollars to our city, allowing us to move the city forward as well. Taylorsville needs strong leaders to keep the city moving forward. I am that strong leader for District 3, and I need your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now you'll get to watch the event down in the audience there, and then if we could have the District 4 candidates, Damon Barber and Wendy Rundle, could make your way to the dais. Ms. Barber, I did put this one in alphabetical order. So with that, you start. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. My name is Dana Barber, and I am running for re-election in City Council District 4. I feel that my experience in economic development is vital for our city right now. We are at a point where we need to see more businesses come to Taylorsville to improve our tax base. I am a fiscal conservative, and I know bringing sales tax revenue to our city has a direct correlation to keeping property taxes low. My 29 years experience with Harmons as Vice President of Real Estate and Government Affairs has helped me to make contact with business owners and developers. I know my way around the real estate industry, and I know my way around the legislature. I have served on and advised the Economic Development Committee and was appointed to and have been an integral participant on the city's economic development team. During my years at Harmon, friends. I was a member of the International Conference of Shopping Centers and made contact with developers and retailers all over the United States. As we are working to redevelop the Family Center, secure tenants for the furniture warehouse space, and West Point Shopping Center, also working with developers for the new dock site on 6200 South, I will continue to lend my support and expertise. As part of economic development, I believe we need to have a vision for our city. We can't just scrape by day by day, but we need to have long-term plans to take care of aging infrastructure. We need to make sure we continue to keep great families in our city by keeping crime low and neighborhoods well maintained. Taylorsville is a great place and I am proud to live here. And I have raised my family here for over 35 years.
That's 2 minutes.
Okay. I don't just say I love Taylorsville, I have proved it with many years on many committees, organizations. I ask for your vote.
And valuable item of the fire that we have in Taylorsville. I'm Bryden Wendy-Wingle, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you. All right, so the folks that you've heard from now do not have a primary election. You'll make your choice November 5th in the general election. And so now what I would like to do is invite the district-wide candidates to take the same seat on the dais. We have some questions. And we have what I thought would be beneficial for us all is we've got some really good questions, and I think we'll just ask the same question of each of the candidates. And so you can kind of see differences as it were, and their opinions on different topics. We have about 6 or 7 questions, and we'll do this for about 20 minutes. Again, if you have a follow-up question, you're welcome just to email that to tbuildquestions@gmail.com. And if we get through these questions quickly enough, we'll see if we can respond to some of those follow-up questions. So the candidates that we have, and again, I just noticed that I didn't do this in alphabetical order either. So my source document wasn't in alphabetical, and I didn't do it. So apparently I've got to go back to kindergarten. So we have, in alphabetical order, we have Mr. Ken Acker. Then we have Dan Armstrong, who is absent tonight. And then we have John Fiddler. So we'll start with Ken. We'll get the first question, and then the same question goes to you, Mr. Fiddler. So, first one, would you describe your vision for the city if you are elected to your chosen seat? Describe my vision. Your vision for the city if elected to your chosen seat.
My issue for the city is to,
You could speak into the microphone.
okay, is that better?
That's better, thank you.
Okay, my vision for the city is on multiple fronts. And from talking to a lot of different citizens and a lot of different people in my district, they seem to share the same goals. First is to find an alternative to just increasing property taxes to fund the city's needs. To accomplish that objective, the thing that we need to do is fill up our retail space so that we've got great parks, we've got a lot of different things that, Taylorsville Days, many things that draw a lot of people into the city. There's no place for us to spend the money. Basically, we're a net exporter of our sales tax dollars because everybody's shopping in the cities around us. So my vision of the city is to reestablish our retail areas as places, as destination locations that people want to come and shop and spend their money. That we're not just a commuter hub where everybody goes through, but nobody wants to stop and do anything. As we see that we've got these huge roads, push the traffic through real fast, but unless they've got a reason to stop, they're just going to keep on going. The other item that has come to, that I've been of the opinion for quite some time, and has been reinforced by my conversations with a lot of people in our district, is that very few people really know what the city is doing. They see the empty stores, they see the empty things, and they think nothing is really happening. So part of my vision is to make sure that the people in District 5 know what's going on, and that they can feel comfortable that the city isn't just sitting back on its laurels, so to speak, that they are actually trying to work to make the city better, to make our lives better, so that we don't have to look for an alternate place to either go to live or spend our money, and that we're comfortable raising our families and maybe our grandchildren and future generations. But without,
That's 2 minutes.
okay, I missed that part. 2-minute response max each one. Okay,
2 minutes.
great. I repent. I will be brief. Perfect. So anyway, that's my vision for the city.
Okay. You need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay.
My name is Jonathan Fiddler, and you can easily remember me by Fiddler on City Hall, if that makes it any easier. Fiddler on the roof, that's just a joke. My vision for the city is basically quite simple. First off, if we don't have a sure foundation, it's not going to get anywhere. I was sitting in this room, and about a year ago, listening to our city council talk about a 40% raise plus a bunch of other stuff, and I was upset. I was quite disappointed that we've had to have such a big raise, in one single year. come to find out, they ended up doing the fire department, in which it was basically going to raise our taxes by about 42%. Conveniently, it was going to be listed as a tax deduction for the city. I was again upset, even more so, and I listened to other people complain about it. And so I stood up here at this pulpit, and I gave my phone number out, and I said, I'm going to start a petition. We're going to make something of this. And the petition was successful. With the number of people I wrote the petition, organized it, we got more than almost double the number of signatures we needed. The citizens were talking back, and we were holding our elected officials accountable. In order to, we went from millions of dollars in surplus 8 years ago to millions of dollars in debt and deficit this last year. And if we cannot get our own city financially stable, there is nothing else we can do to really bring in any businesses. We won't have the money for it. We'd have to borrow and continue in the same path as everybody else. I cannot accept that as our only option. I want to see something turn out. Thank you. I want to see something with our city on a financial stable basis, and then we can continue with everything else. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, this time we'll start with Mr. Fiddler. How much are you willing to spend to achieve your vision?
I've already spent a couple thousand of my own money at this point. So, I haven't asked anybody for any donations, really. I haven't received any. This is all personal to me. I've lived in the city for pretty much my entire adulthood life. And Grand Central, Fred Meyer, Smith's, Furniture Warehouse, empty parking lot. I've seen that too. If it was my own money, it's one thing. If I were talking about the taxpayer money, how much I'd be willing to spend on that, that's a totally different story. I want to see our city thrive, the economic development that we so dearly need to compete with our neighboring cities. We got the Jordan Landing on one side of us and Bella Thermal on the other side. Pretty much sandwiched between an awful lot. We need to come up with better alternatives, not just improving what we have, but we need to come up with much, much better if we're going to financially encourage economic growth. And of course, if we have economic growth, then the businesses, out-of-towners, end up paying for it, not the city, not the residents. And that is actually my goal on what we have and what we can spend.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Acker.
There's not really a set dollar amount that we put on it. I've been in business for 28 years advising entrepreneurial companies. I work for multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies. It's kind of a catch-22. For the last 10 or so years since the city was founded, the city took the approach early on, except for maybe the last year or two, that basically it was up to the developers and the retail companies to come to us. And it just doesn't work that way. So, but I don't think that throwing money at businesses is the answer either. So, primarily, we've already got the bond approved that we did a couple years ago that hasn't all been spent. We've had several tax increases because we deferred things for several years. And like everybody else, I really don't want to see my property taxes go up. But if you look at the cities around us, our household income is as good or higher than any of the surrounding cities. And yet, our property values are probably $20,000 less per home. And I don't think it's as much that our houses are inferior as the perception of the city is that it's dying, that we're just letting it decay and that we're not doing anything about it. Now, my experience in business tells me, and has taught me, that it's a multi-year decision. Nobody just walks in one day and says, you know what, I'm going to put a store in Taylorsville. As people said, that if they do their due diligence, they look around, and if each one of us were to sit and say, okay, if I'm gonna drop $20 million in a city, do I wanna put it in a city that I think doesn't care about itself and is just letting itself degrade? Or do I wanna go a place that's, or invest my money in a place that's growing? Because they want their business to live, they want to make money. And so we have money approved, and we have people assigned, and it's been only really been working on the last 2 or 3 years, and we're changing the perception of the city by those who are outside the city, that they're seeing the no to.
2 minutes, Ken.
Taylorsville is a great place, and they will want to locate here.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next question will start,
Okay?
were you in favor or against a tax increase this year? If against, how would you have balanced the budget without a tax increase? If in favor, how does this year's tax increase benefit the city?
That's a loaded question.
Okay, before you start,
Okay?
we have a clock right up here for the 2 minutes. I'm not looking at that one, I'm looking at
And I
this
should
one.
look over here and try and do the mental math.
So,
That's great.
So just, I'll let you keep by on that.
Okay, great. I was both for it and against it because of a lot of different things. One, is I don't want to pay it any more than anybody else does. But two, for the last several years, I've watched and budgeting process, and we cut here, we cut there, and you know, can I say that every single penny of the city is used perfectly the way it should be? No. But you also have a situation that several things got pushed off. Because of the petition to vote on the UFA thing, the city hadn't funded it for a full year, which put them in a deficit situation. They need to have certain operating funds, or they have to borrow with tax anticipation loans to fund the day-to-day operations, because if it's all property taxes, those only really come in once a year around November, and the city's got to operate for 7 months in between. So I knew we needed to do this. It's been pushed off for several years. As John said, you know, the city decided, well, we can't fight this all off at one point and at one time. So it just kept coming up. At this stage in the game, we can't afford to completely gut our business departments and our permitting employees and our engineers, because if we're going to go out and approve businesses to come in, there's going to be building permits come in, and they're going to need to approve plans and inspect properties and make sure everything is done. So if we make it really hard to come into our city and do business by not having the staff to support it, they're still not going to come, no matter how great our demographics or our location is. So how should we put this? I accept that we had to have a property tax increase. I didn't want it any more than anybody else, but I understand the need, and it's a matter if we don't do it, we're going to be worse off in the long run.
Thank you. John, do you need me to restate the question?
Sure, go ahead.
Were you in favor or against a tax increase this year? If against, how would you have balanced the budget without a tax increase? If in favor, how does this year's tax increase benefit the city?
Okay, I was against it, flat out. I was against it. Just basically for the simple fact that the lack of foresight of our elected officials does not mean it does not make that a problem for the citizens or the fault of the citizens of the city. I sat in the budget committee here at meetings this year, and I listened to them talk about it. They went back and forth. A little bit of questioning as to help define to the committee members what was going on and what each line item was. And then not a very effective answer was given, and there was nothing else to, in my opinion, it was not doing enough to cut the budget. I saw lots of different places where we could have cut, and it could have cut that number down a lot lower than 20, or than 30 that we ended up getting. The previous year, when I was listening in with I didn't go to the budget meeting. I think you might have been part of that meeting back then too. The issue is that I didn't hear anybody saying we cannot tax the citizens more unless we actually do something on our own side. I wanted to see somebody, I probably would never have done the petition had I have seen the city officials asking tough questions to cut the budget in many different ways. Where we're talking about adding a new code enforcement this year, another $50,000, $60,000, when they don't even bring in any revenue other than run around and ensure that everybody's property is up to snuff, so to speak, for lack of a better word. When it really gets down to why we had the tax increase, it's because our city officials were not, in my opinion, were not doing what they should have done and asking those tough questions.
Right, thank you. We'll start with you now, as we're alternating back and forth. So based on the fiscal philosophy that you've stated, how will that philosophy, your philosophy, fiscal philosophy, help the city 20 years from now? 20 years from now would be 2033.
Well, that philosophy, how it helped the city in another 20 years. If we're a debt-free city like we were 8 years ago, how much more money would we have to be able to spend on improvements, economic growth, and so forth? If we have to wait a few years and save up the money to use it for economic development, that is one of the options. We have many different options that we could go and implement or test. When they went through the fire department deal of wanting to annex our fire department to a third entity, creating a new CAT entity in the same process, with which we had a 1 in 8 representation rather than a 100% representation. That, in my opinion, felt like more of a tax burden for the city. Going forward, in another 10, 20 years, who knows how much that'll end up costing the city. Whereas if we have a contract, like we currently do, well, we can negotiate that on a year-to-year basis. I want to see this city survive. I want to see an awful lot of improvement. I want to see these empty lots, empty parking lots and buildings filled, just like we see on a regular basis at Walmart. But I don't feel like we can do it if we have lots of debt. If we're saddled with millions and millions of dollars of debt. We're currently paying about $400,000 a year in interest payments. That $400,000 could easily be used to build up a rainy day fund, or in a few years would be sufficient enough to, in some ways I've seen the economic price tags on a lot of these renovation projects to fill these buildings in the $4 to $8 million price range.
That's some time, John.
And so I want to see this city survive. It has to be done on a stable platform.
Thank you.
Can you please repeat the questions? I make sure I don't ramble too much.
I will. Based on the fiscal philosophy that you mentioned in the previous question, how will your philosophy help the city 20 years from now, which is 2033?
Okay, well, my hope and expectation is that if we adopt a policy of making sure that we focus what resources we do have on the projects that are going to generate more revenue for the city, rather than, oftentimes I sit in meetings where they discuss, well, we want this new park, we want this new expense, we want to spend money here, we want to spend money there. Most of the time, the suggestions and the ideas are all about spending money, not about earning money. And so we're just going to keep spending. We're going to be stuck in the same cycle. I would expect or hope that we follow the policy of focusing on what is going to generate revenue alternatives to property taxes for the city, that we can either eliminate or minimize any future tax increases. But we're kind of in a situation. If the roof blows off your house, you can't say, well, I don't have enough money, I'll change a few shingles this year, I'll do a few shingles next year. You can't do that. Well, right now, with all the empty retail space we've got, basically our roof blown. We've got to fix it, and we can't afford to wait because nobody around us is waiting. Okay, if we don't strike while the time is now, where the companies are re-expanding again, coming out of the economic issues, we don't do what we need to do, then it'll just get worse. And we'll become a veteran community for the cities around us. Everybody will go to the cities around us to spend their money, and all we'll do, the only thing we'll have to support are police and fire and basic services will be property taxes, because our sales taxes are continuing to decline, and they're going to continue unless we do something about it. So my vision is to increase the communication between the citizens to get their opinion and to focus on what will make it so the city can survive without having to go back to the citizens to fund our shortfalls.
Right, thank you. We've got a couple more questions. Thank you to those of you who are submitting them to our email. The first one that I received on email is, do you believe council members need salary and benefits, or should it be a volunteer position? And Ken, will start with you.
Okay. That's an interesting question. I volunteered for 9 years. Mostly it's been in an advisory capacity, and I'm not doing this for the money. Believe me, it's not the money that's driving me. I'm doing this because I sincerely think I am the best person of the people that are running for City Council in District 5. Because if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't run. I'd back out and I'd back somebody else. Okay, so I have a job, I work, I do all the things that I need to do. It really doesn't matter to me about the money. If I had to do it for free, and I could do the job and get the job done, then I would do it for free. Okay, that's just kind of the way I feel about it. If they're going to spend the money, great. I look at what is happening in the adjoining cities, and they pay for city council. Now, there are a lot of expenses that relate to city council, but like I said, unlike some people on the council, I work hard at my career, I do well enough, I can provide for my family, my wife and I both work. This isn't about that. But I understand that it doesn't work that way for everybody. So, I know I'm short of my time, but that's really what I'd say.
Okay, thank you.
You mean we actually get paid? It's a joke, sorry. Salary, that's questionable. I've seen the mayor, for instance, gets paid $80-some thousand. Last I saw was $83,000 plus benefits. We're putting it over $100,000. And it's a full-time position with a full-time city administrator. Other cities have a full-time administrator and a part-time mayor. So are we paying too much? Yeah, I think so. Benefits for part-time elected officials? That's, name any other business out there that pays their part-time employees. Pre-Obamacare, how many companies actually pay benefits? I don't need health benefits. I have my own job. I make sufficient for my needs. I don't have to worry about, I always worry about where the next meal comes from, of course. But as far as it goes with salary and benefits, I can see the city council officials don't get paid very much, in my opinion. And it's not that is not the reason why I'm here. The reason why I'm here is because I've seen too much wasteful spending in so many different areas. And I want to sitting up here at the city council, at the chamber or the desk, I'd be able to do something about it. I'd be able to make decisions and encourage, albeit on 1 in 5, I'd be able to encourage where that money goes. I listened to the report from the committee meeting, or for the budget committee, saying, well, you can take our advice, sort of whatever you want to do with it. I'm just going to suggest you, just weak words. And of course, the city council was the one that actually made the decision on 30%. And I want to see a reverse in the millions of debt and deficit back to the millions in surplus.
Okay, thank you. Another question that we received this evening, we'll start with you, John, is would you support offering incentives to attract major businesses to the city?
I would support whatever can bring them in here, as long as it doesn't become a big burden on the residents. The whole idea of having businesses is to minimize the effect of how much we as citizens and residents of the city actually have to pay. I would like to see more of a feedback program from I'm an internet developer myself by trade, and it is so easy to have it open up for the residents to suggest how can we attract businesses. Is there any type of, do you know of any businesses looking for a place to put the roof, so to speak? I think 60,000 heads are much better than 5. And I would like to see something like that encourage feedback through the city as to how we can provide incentives without raising taxes, without raising the amount of money that we have to put out as a city. I know many other cities actually do pay instead millions of dollars for the IMAX or whichever theater down at the Valley Fair Mall. That's a common practice these days. I'd like to see us innovate and become much better at that.
Thank you. Ken, do you need to repeat the questions?
I must be getting old.
No, it's okay, they're tricky. Just get it back up here. Would you support offering incentives to attract major businesses to the city?
Yes, with the caveat that I would not support any incentive that didn't return more in additional revenue to the city than it costs. It doesn't matter what the project, but you need to look at the broad spectrum. You can't just say, okay, will that individual company generate more? Or by doing this, will all of the other companies around it generate more because of increased traffic? If you know much about retail, it's all about footsteps. You got to have volume of people coming through because everybody that comes is going to spend their money. When we look at different incentives, there are a lot of different things that can be incentives, and over the years, I've really respected the attitude of the city council since its inception, not to just throw money at a company. That they would either spend the money on something that would benefit all of the businesses or the neighborhoods around it, but not giving the money directly to the company. I would want to continue that practice because I just don't think it's necessary. But if it's for something like creating a better access to get into the shopping center where Kmart and Albertsons used to be because you got closed off the main access and chased them away, or if it's spending $50,000 to add a new entrance into the Walmart parking lot from 5400 because people don't want to go in there, or if it's spending money to bring in a county arts center that's going to be built anyway, but it's going to increase tons of traffic and increase desire by companies to want to come in. And there's going to have to be money spent on roads and other different things. So yes, I would support incentives, but not just giving it. And I wouldn't do any incentives or support any incentives that were a negative revenue flow, that cost us a lot more than they're going to.
Right. Thank you very much. And now, with just a minute, I want to just, can I go to a minute instead of 2? All right. What, can you finish that one? So we'll start with you. What's one question you would ask John, and he's getting 1 minute. Then John, what's the question you were asking?
No chance to rebut. Okay. I guess my mantra has been all along that we need to have a plan, that we can't just be reactionary. So my question would be to you, what is your plan for positive and proactive growth? I know what you're against, but I don't really know what you're for. So my question would be, what are you for?
Now do I answer?
Yep, you have 1 minute.
What I'm for the businesses to be able to pay the taxes rather than the citizens. Sandy has an excellent setup with their auto mall. They planned for it in years. It took them years and years to get it in place. So as far as what I support, I'd much rather have businesses bringing in tax revenue for the city that come from outside of the city. Any type of economic growth that would enable that to be the case would be definitely something I would want to look at and see. I want to see something. We've got to do something. There's too many businesses, and we're losing R.C. Willey as well. So something's not going right. Whether it's the economy or something the city's doing, I'm not positive, but I want to see an improvement with the businesses that we have.
Right, thank you. Now, your turn to ask a question. You can have 1 minute. Okay, let's see.
Well, my question to him would be, since I know that you were on the budget committee, why weren't tough questions asked as to how we could have cut the 30% tax increase? Well, at that point, it was 47%. Why weren't tough questions asked during that meeting?
The budget committee meetings are in a very like there were a lot of tough questions asked. If you remember the meeting you were in, and we discussed surplus positions and why did we need to budget and justify a tax increase if we had surplus positions on there that were not even projected to be filled. So we did ask a lot of tough questions. We looked at each revenue item. Talk about the justification, why do we need this, why do we not need this. We didn't ask for all of the detailed information from the city. I'm assuming that the employees still do their job, and that the city administrator and the finance director know how to add up their numbers. And as you stated, our position was a college to the council. And if you remember after the meeting that you did go to, and I had to stand up and give the budget committee presentation, we ran through a list of items that needed to be cut, or that in our recommendation, they did need to be cut. And the council unanimously adopted all of those cuts.
All right, thank you very much. And that are your candidate vote. These folks are your candidates for District 5 for the primary election. Primary voting day is August 13th, which you probably already have ballots in the mail. So I want to thank you very much for answering those questions, and now we'll get into the mayoral race. So if we could have our mayoral candidates come up. All right, thank you.
Hey, Al, can we have them move their huge screen?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how far the court will go.
Not there.
Okay, so Craig Trujillo is representing Rick Morley, and he would like to just give an opening statement and not answer questions since he's not. So So what I'm going to do is, Craig, if you will speak with your opening statement for Rick Morley, and then we'll excuse you as they got a little of questions.
Okay, and Rick apologizes for not being here. He has a family event he needed to go to that he planned for over a year long before he decided to run. For Rick, family is important. Rick has been working in human resources for about 20 years in the city and county governments. He believes that right now Taylorsville needs to make changes. Taylorsville has to grow. It has to become more self-sufficient. It's got to start from not being so top-heavy and really working so you're not sharing that burden as much. So that burden doesn't always fall on the citizens. Again, he apologized. I know I have 2 minutes, and he gave me about a 10-minute statement. So I'll keep it as brief as possible. Rick has never served in office before. He's had that question a lot, but that doesn't mean he hasn't been involved in the Taylorsville community. Currently, he is teaching at Westlake Junior, just down in West Valley. His wife's been a long-time educator. He really believes in family and in his community. He served many positions throughout the city and youth recreation, as well as within his religious affiliation. He really wants to see Taylorsville grow. Taylorsville have a plan for the future. Responsible business development, not always raising taxes. And again, he apologizes. He will be back in town, and I'm sure that he will be knocking on everybody's door real soon. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we'll continue with the opening statements, and we'll start, we did do this one in alphabetical order, so I'm only half dyslexic. We'll start with Mr. LeGrand Hansen, who will be first, followed by Mr. Larry Johnson, who will be second, and then we'll conclude with Mr. Jerry Rechtenbaum.
Thank you. Okay, my name is LeGrand Hansen. I'm a mechanic by trade, not a politician, so this is all new to me. The reason I'm running for mayor is because, like others in this room and others that are running, I felt like the city is kind of going in a different direction than I think it should be, or that we deserve as citizens. I have at times recently had worked 2 jobs to be able to support my family, and at the same time, I see all my taxes going up, and this isn't just a city thing, so the city's going to get a lot of it because I can't do anything about the state the federal rate on. But, you know, taxes everywhere are going up, but my income is going down. And so I'm getting squeezed from both ends. And I know I'm not the only one in the room that feels this way. So I think that the city needs a new direction when it comes to the budget. I've heard people say that we need to spend more to invest for the future. I do believe we do need to invest for the future, but I don't believe we need to spend more in a downturn. I don't think the city needs to raise taxes when everybody else is cutting their budget. I think the city needs to cut its budget. You know, sometimes that is a hard quest. That is a hard thing to do, a hard decision to make, but I think it's the right decision to make. I don't think that debt is proper for the city. It's easy to get into debt, but it's not easy to get out of debt. And then that debt then takes future revenues out of the budget, which makes it harder for us to achieve our budget goals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Johnson.
Yes, I'm Larry Johnson, and currently I serve as the City Council representative for District 5. And I was impressed with our representatives that are running in my seat. I am a self-employed man that has been self-employed for 34 years. I've run a small tire company in West Valley City. I have gone through tough times, I've gone through good times. And I've learned to deal with the bad times and deal with good times. I've learned to spend money when I have it, and I learned to hold back like I think most of us do when we don't have it. I realize that I'm not as Mr. Hansen said, he's not a politician. I consider myself not a politician either. I've lived in Taylorsville for some 55 years. I used to work on these fields that the city sits on now with my grandparents. I love this city. I was going to move years ago, and we were looking at some property in Alpine and decided this is home. This is where we belong. I'm a hard worker. I consider myself with integrity. I'm concerned about the people. I'm concerned about those that are on fixed incomes. I'm concerned about those that have a hard time filling their tanks. I've been blessed with a good income all my life. I've worked hard. I've been taught to work hard by my grandparents on the farm. And in closing, I'd just like to thank all of you that have come to listen to us. This is an opportunity, a great privilege for me to run for mayor, win or lose. I love this city, and I have your concerns, and I listen to you, and I also think about you. I want the city to grow. We can make the city grow without a doubt, but we don't need to cripple the citizens of the city with huge tax hikes that will hurt us all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Reichenbach.
Thank you. My name is Jerry Reichenbach. I'm currently serving as mayor of Taylorsville. And for and a little bit about myself, I too have been self-employed. I have a Taylorsville business, so I know what it's like to run a business, be employed, and also volunteer and serve as an elected official. A little bit has been said about being a politician. I've always said in the city many that you can be an elected official without being a politician, because I consider the two different things. I do not consider myself a politician. But as far as my vision for the city, it's been well stated from the day I was sworn into office as mayor in January, and even prior to that as a city councilman. I think I failed to mention, for the 9 years prior to this, I served as the city council member in Taylorsville 3. So I have a good understanding of the workings of the city. So on the day that I was sworn into office and every day after that, I have stated my vision for the city and the issues which I feel are important that we address. Just a couple of things I'd like to talk about in the minute I have remaining is that I understand it's hard times for all of us. We've all been through hard times. We've all been through good times. We all know what we have to do to get through those times, and we understand those as a city as well. I think a lot has been said about, perhaps misstated, about huge tax cuts. Keep in mind that Taylorsville City is still almost one of the lowest tax cities in the valley. And nobody looks at taxes as something we just really want to do. But what we need to look at is, how do we see the future of our city? And what are the things that we feel we need to do to invest in that city so that we maintain it, so that it stays a place that we all want to live in, instead of a place that slowly begins to decline because, as Mr. Actor stated, the roof was blown off and we haven't properly prepared it. So those are the things I think we have to take advantage of, we have to pay attention to. We have to be wise stewards of the dollar, but we also have to make sure our city is properly invested. Sorry,
All right, thank you. Yeah, just remember we have a clock in the back for you. I'm sure Cheryl will let you know if you go a little bit over. Okay, first question, we'll go ahead and start in the same order we just did opening. So we'll start with Mr. Hanson, and then Mr. Johnson, and then Mr. Reichenbach. If you become the mayor, what priorities would you have, or what things would you change?
What priorities would I have? Okay, if I was to become mayor, the priorities that I would have is to control the budget, cut out waste if I can, and then try to find a way to bring in economic development. Kind of continue along the way that we have, but without using taxpayer money to pay businesses. Like Ken said, I don't think it's right that the city uses taxpayer money to give to a business. Or for that matter, I don't think it's right that we use taxpayer money to renovate a shopping center just for that 0.5 of 1% that the city gets directly, and then other revenues that they get from the state as well for tax. So I think the biggest, most important thing is keeping the budget under control, trying to find ways to get more businesses in. I found that we as a city and other government entities, I think we put more businesses out of business than what we'd like to think. We build a road and we put business out because they can't get any customers to it. When we redo 5400 South in Redwood, we build the road and then a couple months later, we got to rebuild it again because we don't have access. You know, I think we need a long-term plan as we're going about this. We need to figure out what we need and plan for it in advance and set funds aside to do that in advance. And again, not use debt to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Repeat, please.
Question is, if you become the mayor, what priorities would you have, or what things would you change?
When I become the mayor, which I hope to, so I can have a challenge to exceed my goals, economic development is my first thought. As I've been emailed by many citizens and many in my district and others, they're concerned about the vacant buildings we have. We're 97% built, other than the vacant buildings we have. We have huge places. If we concentrate on economic development and we land a so-called big name company, it'll bring the others in. You know, but I mean, we can get the small little business, but we're going to have to get us a major network in here that we can draw other small businesses in. As you notice over in West Valley, they bring in Winco's, and pretty soon you have all the nail shops, we have barbecue places. And those are things that we need to work on to bring in income. You know, it's easy to raise taxes, and we need to, as a city. I would, as mayor, look into economic development. I would look into their planning. I would look into the strategy that the committee has, the employees, the possibilities. I would be aggressive in selling our city, and also be able to close the deals. We need to, there's a lot of things in the council that we get to see and hear. We don't get to always know everything that's going on, unless they want us to move forward with more money. But I would want to dig into that to see, because what we're doing now in the last 15 years is not working. There's so many, and I'll end real fast, but I used to take my oldest son, who was 18, to the pizza place down there by, what was it called? Anyway, that was over 18, 20 years ago, it's still vacant. So we need to really get on the economic development, as has been stated, to get the taxes back into the city.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Breckenbach.
Thank you. I think the difference here is I think we're going to hear a lot of the same thing, priorities being about the same. And I've stated that economic development has to be our #1 priority. If we don't pay attention to economic development and we continue to dwindle, we have to fund and operate the city on the backs of property tax primarily, rather than increasing our sales tax base. The difference is, as I said, for the 9 years I served as a council member, now in the last 8 months as mayor, I have actually been involved heavily in that. I guess the thing that's most misunderstood is the difficulty it is, as Mr. Johnson is saying, just bring in a big anchor tenant. I have personally been involved in that. I've been on, as Mr. Barton said, to the International Conference and Shopping Center for 6-7 years in a row, talking to the Home Depots, talking to the Winco's, to the Costco's, trying to attract them to come here, talking to all the big anchors. I have been directly involved with the economic development, with our Sullivan County economic development, with the economic development corporate of Utah. The difference is, I have been doing it. I understand the difficulty, and that it is a process. It's a journey. It's not an instant thing of gratification. And so now let's address one of the comments that was made, that we need to focus on economic development, but on the same hand, we don't spend taxpayer dollars on it. Let's talk about the cities around us. One of the biggest questions asked me all the time is, why don't we fill these empty spaces, build these businesses? Let's go out and get a Winco or a Macy's and bring them in. And so what are the other cities? What is Sandy doing? What is West Valley? What is West Jordan doing? What they're doing is they're financing that. They're giving incentives. I think it was said earlier, $5 to $7 million just for the IMAX. But the difference is, that can be funded as a positive return on investment. And then, in the long-term strategy, those tax incentives that are coming back to us build our sales tax base and help us stabilize overall tax base. So it's a two-edged sword. We do have to spend money, but we have to incentivize wisely where we have a return on investment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Second question, and we'll start with Mr. Johnson first. We'll just rotate so everybody has a chance to be first and last, and someone in the middle. So we'll start with this question with Mr. Johnson, then Mr. Reckenbach, and then Mr. Hanson will follow up. We'll conclude this one. And I'll repeat the question if you let me know. Okay. Question is, how do you envision code enforcement priorities? How would code enforcement be directed if you are the mayor?
It's a very good question. Code enforcement is needed in the city. Code enforcement needs to be a fair. The ordinances that we put in code enforcement need to be fair to the people. They also need to be enforced. A couple, for instances, I've complained on some things, and I would like to see code enforcement continue, but I would like to see them finish out what they start. I've noticed some things that people call me on, and I've called it in, and they go issue a citation or a ticket, but then I follow up and say, what are we doing with that? And I would just like to see more follow-up and more conclusion, more finalizing. The people's properties are so important. They maintain a nice property, you get someone who moves in next door to you, and doesn't take care of their place, or there's problems. You get discouraged if things aren't looked at and taken care of, and that's the responsibility of the city and code enforcement. As far as, I think the code enforcement does a good job. I don't think we need any more added code enforcement. I think we just need to be more efficient at our job and what we do, and make sure we follow up on the things that we write citations on, and give people a break. And also give people a little bit of time. You know, don't take them because they have a load of dirt that they're waiting to put in a sandbox or something because it's in there for 2 or 3 days. We need to be a little bit mindful of the citizens. But also, we need to also pursue those that abuse it, and make the neighborhood and a place that others try to take care of the property and keep their values up.
Okay.
Thank you. With code enforcement, I have to say, is probably one of the hotter topics around. Mr. Johnson mentioned it needs to be fair, but in reality, what we normally see is what one person considers unfair, their neighbor who perhaps is the one that filed a complaint considers completely fair because of different interpretations on that needs to be done. So it is a very delicate thing to do. And so I will tell you, since I have been dealing with that quite closely for the last 8 months, my vision on code enforcement is that we need to focus on our neighborhoods. Everyone deserves the right to live in a clean, well-kept, and protected neighborhood. And that includes health and safety. In fact, just today, maybe you saw our Facebook post that went out specifically about code enforcement in neighborhoods, because that's one of our number one priorities, is making sure that we take care of the neighborhoods properly. And that's part of that is code enforcement. A few weeks back, I invited our code enforcement officers into my office because we had a few complaints which I thought were valid complaints from people that maybe we just didn't quite understand the philosophy. And at that time, I had the discussion, and the discussion is that what we're looking for is a nice, well-kept place that is reasonably clean, and there's no safety, health, or danger to the neighbors. Then we looked at some photos of some of them we were working on, and the philosophy is this: they might have a tree that's hanging down within the 7 feet on that sidewalk, maybe it's at 6 feet or 6.5 feet. It might be hanging over the street at 12 feet instead of 13.5, so the sanitation trucks are hitting it. But the rest of the place could look really nice. The philosophy is this: there are egregious violations in the city. Those are the areas we need to focus on. So in my meeting today, we sat down with our team. We looked at the areas that we need to focus on, And I've instructed them to develop a plan on how we will go out and how we will pursue that, and develop a plan that's going to be workable and right for the people as a whole.
Okay. You didn't need to repeat the question?
Code enforcement. Okay, code enforcement, I think obviously we need reasonable code enforcement for health and safety issues. If a tree's gonna fall down on the neighbor's yard or their property, cause damage, we need to do something about it. If they have a pile of branches that have been sitting in their backyard for 3 years and it's a rat's nest, you know, that's a health issue. We need to do something about that. I think some of our codes have gotten a little intrusive and a little overbearing. I'll give you an example. I went on a family vacation, my brother and I, we come back, and it's 11 o'clock at night, we pull up in the street, and he's got his bulk, his camper on his truck, and he parks in the street instead of putting it away. I mean, it's 11 o'clock at night, he wants to put it away. Well, at 8 o'clock in the morning, the police are at his door, telling him he needs to move because he's violating code. At the time, from what I understand, the code is 24 hours, but it hadn't even been 12. And there's people in the neighborhood who just don't want vehicles in the street, so they abuse it. And I think we have a problem with people abusing codes to harass other neighbors, and I don't want that to happen. I think our codes need to be reasonable. We can't have a vehicle parked in the street for weeks on end. I understand that, but it needs to be reasonable. Other things, when I say a little too intrusive, I don't think it's right that the city tells you how tall your grass can be. Yeah, I think our yards do need to look nice. We need to do what we can to keep our properties looking nice. But at what point are we intruding on people's personal property rights? It is their property. They should be able to reasonably do what they want to do with their property as long as it's not harming somebody else.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, the next question will start with Mr. Reichenbach and Mr. Hanson and then Mr. Johnson. What are your plans, or what would you plan to do about bringing new business to the 5400 South Redwood Road area and the 5400 South and Mayoral Highway area?
So both on 5400 South, one on Redwood, one on Mayoral?
That's correct.
Okay, you put me a little bit of a disadvantage because a lot of this you can't talk about openly because of the confidentiality agreements that both of us are signed, so we have to be careful. So I'm going to be maybe just a little bit vague on this. We are in the middle of what I consider very serious discussions and negotiations with people on both sides of 5400 South at Redwood Road, both the Plaza 5400, the furniture warehouse side, as well as the other side, the DDR side. We've become very frustrated with the DDR side, the family center, because of the lack of cooperation that we consider by the owner. And obviously the city's hands are tied somewhat. We don't own the property. We can bring them clients all day long, and if the owner isn't willing to step up and do something, there's not much we can do about it. So we've taken a different tack, which I have to be very careful talking about. But we are working closely with developers. They're very interested in bringing a new concept into there. And that's about all I'm going to say about that. Let's go up to Bangor, the West Point Shopping Center up there. That was a devastating blow to us when that intersection went in. And by the way, I'll comment on the intersection. 5400 South is a state road. You got control. And they put those things in. They don't ask us to do it. And we have to live with it. And yes, it did have detrimental effect for business. That's what we had to live with up on West Point. It caused a lot of pain and grief for us there. So in the meantime, we negotiated with to put in a partial light signal, what they call a high-key intersection, and reroute some of the traffic inside, which will allow traffic into the site and pump a little life into that. The upside has been, we've got the owner who worked with us there. They're actively working on it. We've dealt with them, and that'll be going in the next month or so. We should see that being completed. And then they can entertain. There's already a restaurant pad going in up there, and a few things are already beginning to happen. So, short 2 minutes to talk about a couple of sites.
Thank you. Mr. Hanson.
Okay, well, all right, looks like I'm a little disadvantaged here. They're already doing the work on it. So what I would do is continue working with the landowners and the potential businesses that are coming in. And if there were no businesses coming in, then I would work with my community development and economic development teams to try and go out and recruit and find businesses. I'm sure that's what we've been doing. And then work with them to figure out what it would take to get them in. If it's anything that the city's responsible for, then I'd make sure that we find a way to do it. Because obviously, if we fill those spaces, both locations, West Point and 5400 South of Redwood, then our tax base goes up, and then the liability for the taxes is relieved from the citizens.
So can I take this as a minute?
No, we'll give you, are you done? Or do you want to speak on Baylor or?
Well, it's the same thing with both properties. I would work with trying to get access, which the city's already doing. With the 5400 South of Redwood, the left turn access, I think that's a good idea. Allow access into the properties, make it feasible for the businesses to succeed there. Get it so the customers can come in. Try to remove any barriers we can for that business.
Okay. Thank you. We'll reset it to 2 minutes, and Mr. Johnson, you'll have 2 minutes.
As a city councilman, I've probably been outspoken quite a bit on this. I sometimes get a lot of hand, I think, I would say. But I'm always concerned, especially 54th and Bangor. We bonded money for that road to go in. Without a road to go in there, nobody's going to be interested in leasing that property in there, because you have to go clear up to 40 to turn around, make a U, and it's just a big can of worms. And while we're talking about a can of worms, I'm not a real fan of the flex lanes. I think the hindrance business. If I had my way, I'd probably take the poles down and go back to the normal deal. The 54th, it's under construction now. It's not all our fault. Part of that was DOT. We need to get that in so that we can have people interested. I had a business to bring us in Taylorsville. I wouldn't consider that area until we had some access. As far as Redwood Road, as the mayor said, there's some things that we can't talk about. I'm excited the things that have been brought before us, and I hope they pan out. We've seen a lot of things that don't pan out, and that's why I guess in my first statement I would like to review some of the approaches and strategies, and I look into economic development. Somewhere along the line, we're missing a link in there, and we need to get that link back so that we can get these businesses in here to help subsidize our taxes. And, there is a way to do that, and if I'm mayor, when I'm mayor, I'll do all I can to dig into those problems. And if I don't have the problems to solve myself, I'll have somebody around me that know more than I know, that I'll make sure that I listen to. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go for 2 more questions, which will put us a little bit past 8 o'clock, a couple minutes after 8 o'clock, but I think we've got a couple questions that are very good. So in this order, this question, we'll start with Mr. Hanson, and then Mr. Johnson, and then Mr. Reckenbach. In Taylorsville's form of government, the mayor is the CEO of the city. What is your experience in management, and what is your management style?
All right. The mayor of Taylorsville is the CEO, basically. He sets the agenda and kind of sets the direction that the council goes off of it. My experience in an executive type position, I was in restaurant management. I did that for about a decade. And in restaurant management, I had the opportunity to make schedules, hire people, fire people, adjust for revenue fluctuations. So if sales went down, I had to cut staffing or cut hours. If revenue went up, I had to increase staffing. I was responsible for placing orders, so any amount of food product that we need, I had to bring in. I also had to set my plans. I had long-term plans, short-term plans to try and, I had to set goals as to how much I thought we could do. Different activities I would do to go out and drum up business, going out business to business marketing, coupons, all that kind of stuff. So at the restaurant, the store manager, he's the top guy, he's responsible for everything. So if anything didn't go right, then I got the blame. I had to be responsible for everybody there. Anything that they did, I was responsible for. And with Taylorsville's form of government, with the mayor and the council, the mayor is pretty much the same thing. If the city isn't running the way that we feel it should be, unfortunately, the mayor kind of gets the brunt of that anger from the citizens because they see him as the cause or the one who set the direction that the city's going. So I mentioned this is up.
Okay, thank you.
Repeat, please.
In Taylorsville's form of government, the mayor is the CEO of the city. What is your experience in management and what is your management style?
Like I said, I have been self-employed, I've been in business for 34 years. My wife told me 35, but I figured I was 34. Everybody should own a business and realize what it's all about. It's not easy. It's easy when things are working real smooth. It gets really hard when you have to deal with employees, you have to deal with losing money, you have to deal with cutting back. Those are the things that are part of being in business. And just like the city, the mayor is the CEO. If I call the shots at my tire company and tell them this is the way I want, then I'm going to be held responsible. Whatever the mayor does in the city, whether he proposes a tax hike or whether he proposes a flat tax, he's the man that we look at. It all starts from the top. And we have to have broad shoulders as a leader and someone that can be good to employees and understand their problems and feelings, but we also have to be stern enough to get the job done. We have to be able to, as CEO, we have to be able to help them understand their duties and be effective. Because once you have more help than you need doing the same job, pretty soon you're out of business. So as mayor, I do have the experience. I'm not running for mayor because I need the money. I've done very well in my tire company for 32 years, basically because I did exactly that. I watched my spending, work hard. If we get shorthanded, I still get out there and get calluses on my hands at 62 years old because I was taught that way. And that's the way I expect to run a city, in a fair way, an effective way, be fair to the people, as long as they're fair to us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You need me to repeat the question?
If you would, please.
In Taylorsville's form of government, the mayor is the CEO of the city. What is your experience in management and what is your management style?
Thank you. My previous life before mayor, I spent 28 years, and I noticed I don't look old enough to have done this. But, I spent 28 years in consulting engineering, and then when I retired from that, I spent the last 9 years in small business here in Taylorsville. So my experience as a consulting engineer, I operated as a regional business development principal for a multinational company, hundreds of billions of dollars of revenues a year. I was responsible for virtually all of the business development for that company, and then with a local consulting engineer locally in the city of Utah. I was a principal vice president operating the business end, human resources, as well as the operational portion of that business. I fully understand what it's like to keep a budget, to build a business plan, to stay on the business plan. There were times when the economy got tough, when I had to tell my wife that I wasn't going to be able to take a paycheck this time around just because the revenues had not come in from the business. So I understand how it is to tighten the belt and to operate the business. As far as my management style, I believe that you need to get the right people surrounding you in the key positions. You need to get good people, qualified people. You need to take care of them so they stay, because it's not cost effective to treat them poorly, to not pay them properly, and have turnover, then have to retrain new people every couple of years. So you need to get the right people, the qualified people around you. You need to trust in their judgment, give them your philosophy, tell them what you expect, and then allow them to do their job, and don't micromanage them. That's my style here in the city, and I believe it's working well. I changed up a few things when I came in. I changed the organizational structure, but all the directors and managers in the city understand what I expect out of their position, and now we allow them to go with it and be successful.
Right. Thank you, and I know we're approaching 8 o'clock, but I have one more question that was asked tonight a few minutes ago that I'd like to address. It starts with...
I don't know about the other two, but I won't turn into a pumpkin. So.
Okay, the rest of you okay? So is the audience okay if we go one more question? Okay. So the question that was asked, and it's, I guess it impacted several races, but it was asked while you were up here. So there's, this person has heard a lot of blame towards current administrators about mismanagement of policies. For example, blaming the city for businesses closing because of different road projects. These road projects are actually under UDOT's control, which was mentioned. I would like to know how much time that each candidate has spent researching the authority and responsibility of the position they seek. And we started with, who did we start with on that last one? Okay, so Mr. Johnson.
Can you repeat that again? Then I was kind of
Okay, so we'll start with...
listening and listening.
Okay, so we'll start with Mr. Johnson, then Mr. Rettenbach, and then Mr. Hanson. And there was asked this evening, a lot of blame towards current administration about mismanagement of budget and policies. For example, blaming the city for closing businesses because of different road projects, such as 5400 South, which is actually under UDOT's control. So the question is, I would like to know how much time that each candidate has spent researching the authority and responsibility of the position they seek.
How much time?
Well, 2 minutes.
No, I know that. I've spent 4 years, this is my 4th year on the city council, and I've learned a lot. I had a few people ask me 4 years ago why I didn't run for mayor, and I said, because I have no experience. The experience I've learned, I've won a few battles and probably lost a lot. I've done research on a lot of things that we do in council meetings. You're right about the lady that said that we have no choice on the UDOT on the road going into the Kmart. And that probably was the quickest way to get Kmart to close doors. We battled, if I'm correct, we battled with them. It's taken us time to get that road in, which I'm frustrated on because every building that sits, plus we've spent part of the tax money, the bond, we're paying interest on, I think $20,000 a year right now, and there's nothing going, and that's why I always get upset about what we're doing now. We need to hurry up. I'm the type of person that I guess I'm a little impatient. I just expect things to be done a little bit faster than the contractors do. Also, as you've heard my expression on the flex lanes, I think they were already in progress when I became a councilman. I don't like them. I think they have hurt business. I live at 3500 South and the bus lane down there. I watched where my business is. I've watched businesses close left and right along 3500 South. And for rent signs all along there. It has hurt. Certain DOT projects do hurt. And I hope as mayor that when those things come about, that I have an opportunity to make a decision that I'll be able to think about the businesses and the people, because without businesses, we would be if we have the business that we need, we would be harping and talking about these tax increases, which I do not favor. They're just too stiff on the people at this time, and we need to think about what they're doing, retired people, businesses, the rental properties, everything that trickles down. And so I have done a lot of research, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rattenbaugh, you want me to repeat the question?
No,
Okay.
I spent 90-plus years researching the position. My 9 years on the council were very informative. 3 of those years I spent as chairman of the council. So I worked very closely with that. As mayor, I've had a better opportunity to look into that. It's been stated that sometimes we don't have control of a lot of these issues. UDOT, for instance, controls many of the roads in Taylorsville more than probably most cities. We have 54, 47, Redwood, Bangor, all controlled by UDOT, and some of the projects they want to do, they do. But those are disturbing to me, and so, I think you can sit back and say, oh, well, it's UDOT, or you can take the bull by the horns and see if you can't change things for the better, which, by the way, is what got me into elected politics here. And so one of the first things I did as mayor is I invited the UDOT executive director and the upper staff into our office, along with our legislative people, and told them I thought that UDOT needs to be more sensitive about the communities they're putting their facilities through. And whatever they do, they need to recognize affects the community and the potential prosperity of that community. One of the things I asked for is another access off Bangor to replace the one they took away from us in the Kmart. They were resistant of that, but I said, you know what, you have to be considerate of what's the right thing to do. If it doesn't negatively impact Bangor Highway, why would you do something that's beneficial to the community? We're now looking closely at them giving us an access into that to what's called property. Another thing is, one thing you quickly learn in this position is you have to have good relationships with other agencies, with the county, with the other mayors, with your legislators. And just this year, one of the things we need to do to fix the problem of 62 and Bangor and on Bangor is relocate a few roadways up there. We were successful in getting $4.2 million to put a signal, to put in a bridge for the school children, make it safer, and to realign some of the roadways and alleviate the traffic issues in that street. So there's a lot more we can talk about, but it's a huge learning curve if you're not involved in it.
Thank you.
Okay. So far in this in this race, I haven't been harping a whole lot on the businesses being put out of business by the road construction. And I haven't blamed it on the city. I made mention a little bit earlier about it, but I realized those roads are UDOT, and we don't have as much control as we would like. As far as researching into the mayor position, I've been working for the last several years 2 jobs. And so it's been difficult to get as much research as I would like. But I have been doing a lot of research on budgets and what the mayor does. And I've been doing that since probably about this time last year is when I decided to start looking into it. So quite a while I've been researching it, trying to figure out what I can do to maybe influence some change, see if I can change the direction, or no, I left my notes at home. So sorry. Just gotta compose everything. Mostly what I've been doing is just looking at budgets of our city, budgets of other cities, seeing how other cities have ran their governance, what projects they work on, how they fund their projects, what things have been successful for them, what things have been successful for us. I've been trying to put things together to find a new direction for the city.
Great. Thank you very much. I wish to thank the mayoral candidates and all the candidates running for office. We've got a hard choice to make, I think. We've got some great candidates running. Again, I want to thank you for allowing me to run a little bit over as we asked one final question. If you would like information on the Chamber of Commerce, our website is chamberwest.org. And I noticed some lightning flashes out there. I don't know if the roads are wet, but I hope that you go home tonight, that you will drive safely. And also hope that you will patronize your local Taylorsville businesses, because when you do, there is a portion of the sales tax that does come back to the city, and that helps reduce the demand on property tax. So as you do your shopping this year, I hope, as the president of the Chamber of Commerce, that you will do business with local business. We have a searchable database on our website at chamberwest.org where you can see the businesses that are members of the Chamber of Commerce and support our local community. If you have any questions, I've left some of my business cards there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about business. It's been fun watching the businesses grow, and despite the economic downturn. So again, thank you all for coming tonight, and make sure you do cast your vote. Thank you.